Fantasy Beast Continent, The Otherworld Veterinarian Chapter 1, Time Travel. Listening to his stomach rumbling, and then looking at the layers of mist obscuring his vision, Chu Tian couldn't help but sigh. I only regret not coming here. Having been in this strange place for over a month, looking at the crimson moon above, Chu Tian affirmed it once more, I've come to another world. Recalling, he had suddenly been swept away in a thunderous whirlwind, his eyes tightly shut, his mind buzzing. When he opened his eyes, he found himself in an undulating mountain range. Plants grew everywhere, adorning the mountains, ancient trees soared to the sky, and bushes of all shapes and sizes, mostly similar to those on Earth. The only difference was the red moon in the sky. After pondering for several days, Chu Tian suspected he had returned to primitive times. In this bizarre place, for such a long time, he hadn't heard a single sound of an animal moving, which forced him to eat only plants daily. His palate had grown tired. The clothes he wore, after many days of wandering, could no longer cover his body. After walking for a while, Chu Tian found a tree full of fruit. He rushed to pluck them frantically, and a moment later, the tree was bare of branches, as most of its fruit and leaves had become nutrients in his stomach and coverings for his body. For the past month, Chu Tian had finally accepted the fact that he had been sent back in time to the past, and also began cursing all the gods and Buddhas. Damn the heavens! All the protagonists he read about in fantasy novels, after transmigrating, either possessed peerless martial arts or strange abilities, and subsequently acquired countless gold coins and beautiful maidservants by their side. But what about him? He was essentially just an undergraduate student from an agricultural and forestry university, nothing more. Moreover, he studied a major that, to put it nicely, was animal medicine, but to put it plainly, was veterinary science. It seemed Chu Tian's curses had some effect. After searching for food, today, he finally found meat. Considering the current situation, Chu Tian secretly praised the heavens and earth for their spiritual efficacy. In this boundless landscape, there lay a snow-white rabbit, no, a palm-sized puppy whimpering. Its tiny hind leg appeared abnormal, probably broken. Gusts of mountain wind swept through, making the plants everywhere rustle, and Chu Tian's stomach rumbled in response. For someone who had eaten only wild vegetables and forest fruits for over a month, this free fragrant meat would surely have an incredibly special taste, perhaps even more delicious than the high-quality delicacies found in luxurious restaurants. Chu Tian smacked his lips, as if smelling roasted puppy, saliva gushing out. He secretly thanked heaven and earth, picked up a wooden stick, and prepared to roast the dog. Although this meat would only yield 1 or 2 pieces, it was meat nonetheless. The little dog, likely knowing its fate, trembled all over and stared at Chu Tian with big, round, sparkling, pitiful eyes. Humph! What are you looking at? After a moment of hesitation, Chu Tian finally let out a sigh, gritted his teeth, threw the wooden stick to the ground, and plopped down onto the ground. Having been trained as a veterinarian, Chu Tian had mistreated quite a few small animals during experiments and had even cruelly performed surgery on many dogs and cats. But today was different. This little dog had eyes full of sorrow, and its wrinkled face expressed deep emotion. That's right, it was a human expression. This made Chu Tian realize in alarm that what he was about to eat was no ordinary dog. Consider yourself lucky. You've met a good person like me. Chu Tian gently patted the dog's head. He never expected that he, who was about to be branded a butcher specializing in vaccinating and neutering dogs and cats, would one day develop such a compassionate heart. Back then, when he studied animal anatomy, Chu Tian had shocked and disgusted the entire class by expertly dissecting the test animal into pieces, all under the professor's praise. Goo goo goo. The little dog rubbed its head against him, frantically licking Chu Tian's hand, revealing a pretty pink tongue. Haha. Interesting. Chu Tian examined its hind leg and said, Your luck isn't bad today, you've met a skilled veterinarian like me. Busily gathering branches into a bundle, he muttered, Since I'm helping, I'll go all the way. Now I'll fix your broken dog bone. It's going to hurt a bit, so you need to endure it and not move. After speaking, Chu Tian laughed at himself, thinking, why did he need to say such nonsense to a dog? Goo goo. Ah. This pup even nodded its tiny head. Chu Tian, must be dreaming. Hey, can you understand me? Those sparkling eyes quickly blinked 2 or 3 times. Gru. Oh my. How can a dog in another world be so extraordinarily intelligent? Without further ado, Chu Tian quickly realigned the broken bone ends of the puppy and splinted them tightly. The entire procedure only took about 3 minutes. Admiring his masterpiece, Chu Tian couldn't help but feel pleased with himself. For years of university were not in vain, although he hadn't managed to win over any female friends, his proficiency in veterinary techniques had made his esteemed teachers in school proud. Remembering his identity as a veterinarian, then thinking of the protagonists in the novels he read, and then thinking of himself again, Chu Tian couldn't help but let out a long sigh. Wealth and beautiful women were now even more distant than before. Becoming an outstanding figure was not even a dream. He just wondered if people in this world raised pets or ornamental plants. If he could open a veterinary clinic, that would be great, at least he would have something to eat. After being cared for, the little dog stretched out comfortably on the ground, whimpering, its tiny tail wagging incessantly. Gazing at the adorable pup, he narrowed his eyes. A sly smile suddenly appeared on Chu Tian's face. Little rascal, don't you have any other family? The dog shook its head. Chu Tian was delighted by this, smiling, which made him look a bit more handsome. Then will you follow me from now on? After a moment of hesitation, it nodded. From today, we will be bound by fate. Chu Tian said sadly. But he received a joyful nod. What should I name you now? Let's call you Xiaobai. The dog shook its head frantically like a whirlwind. Haha. Ignoring its protests, Chu Tian stood with his hands on his hips, laughing loudly, celebrating his successful tricking of a minor dog. There was nothing wrong with binding their lives together, but Chu Tian's tiny life in this soaring, undulating mountain range of another world, who knew what would happen? Having Xiaobai accompany him could solve his lonely situation, and he could also let it be the rear guard when encountering magical beasts. Moreover, if he met bandits, he could use it as a toll. And most importantly, when he was about to starve to death, it could be his last meal. Xiaobai knew nothing of its tragic future, innocently rubbing its forehead, constantly shaking its head back and forth, even whimpering as if very troubled by its new name. Little brother. Suddenly, a low voice echoed, pulling Chu Tian, who was daydreaming, back to reality, and bringing him endless excitement. These 3 words, little brother, made Chu Tian incredibly happy. First, he had finally met humans and would no longer linger in these mountains, struggling to survive another day. Second, the people here spoke Han Chinese. Third, from the polite way of addressing him, it was clear the newcomer had no ill intentions. To clarify these 3 points, Chu Tian quickly adjusted his thoughts, preparing to greet his first interaction in another world. Oh, hello. May I ask who you are? As he replied, Chu Tian sized up the sturdy man in front of him. The man wore a beautiful set of medieval European-style knight's plate armor, with a 2-meter-long ancient sword hanging on his back, and short, pitch-black hair. His complexion was imposing, though a bit haggard. I am Kanaz of the Kaisa Empire. May I ask your esteemed name, little brother? Why are you in the Setting Sun mountain range? After speaking, he enthusiastically admired young Master Sua's grass clothes. This place was originally called the Setting Sun mountain range. Chu Tian, wearing clothes made of flowers and plants, was a bit flustered. He finally knew the name of the place that had made him suffer for so long. So it is Mr. Kanaz. Chu Tian nodded and smiled faintly, revealing a cheerful expression. You haven't heard of me? Seeing Chu Tian's calm demeanor, Kanaz was a bit surprised. He immediately smiled and said, I apologize for being so presumptuous, not everyone on this continent knows me. He wondered how famous this man in front of him was that he assumed everyone would know him. He needed to be careful. Chu Tian's mind raced like lightning, his mouth also speaking non-stop. My name is Chu Tian. I originally lived in a very distant small mountain village. This is my first time here. The people in my village were all killed by bandits, and I was the only one who escaped. As a result, I ran to this place and got lost. At this moment, Chu Tian felt admiration for his acting skills, to the point where even the famous Kanaz standing before him sighed continuously because of him, which made him secretly chuckle. My village is very far away and not widely known. Hearing what you just said, you must be very renowned? So you, brother, grew up in Tianci village? No wonder you haven't heard of me. Kanaz smiled faintly, not at all angry at Chu Tian's question. Please allow me to introduce myself, Kanaz, commander of the Fire Dragon Legion of the Kaisa Empire, Dragon Knight, Marquis Kanaz. Dragon Knight? Chu Tian blinked twice, as if he had just caught a big fish. Chapter 2, Injured Giant Dragon. After changing into new clothes provided by Kanaz, Chu Tian hugged Xiao Bai tightly and hurriedly walked along the mountain path, chatting incessantly with Kanaz, while enjoying the dry rations he had been given. He also took the opportunity to inquire about the current situation in this other world. This world was called the Fantasy Beast Continent. Its continental landmasses were distributed very similarly to Europe and Asia on Earth, with 3 sides surrounded by sea, but the north was not an icy polar region. Instead, it was a vast, desolate grassland. That region was the territory of the beast race, where bloodthirsty and aggressive beast men often gathered in the Xian He Great Grassland, charging through the Red Earth to invade the eastern side of the Kaisa Empire. The western and southern continents were 2 fertile and rich regions, occupied by the Lei Si Empire and the Magic Kingdom of Ai Air Senator. Among the 3 empires, the continent in the middle, with highly developed commerce, was the Si Huate Kingdom. These 4 great powers formed the continent's basic sphere of influence. Within these 4 great nations, many smaller neighboring states constantly influenced the situation. Apart from beastmen, other intelligent races such as dwarves, elves, and earth spirits were scattered among humans, with no fixed abode or definite territory. After learning that the person walking ahead was a representative prominent figure of this world, Chu Tian made a firm decision. He absolutely had to tie the latter half of his life closely to Kanaz. Being able to rely on such a 1,000-year-old ancient tree for abundant shade, benefits, was simply wonderful. If he just casually raised a finger, all his life problems in this other world would be resolved. Moreover, this prominent figure seemed not bad at first glance, Chu Tian thought, becoming much more enthusiastic, and soon the 2 were calling each other sworn brothers. Big brother, why have you come to this desolate mountain wilderness? Haha, this isn't a desolate mountain wilderness. Hearing Chu Tian's words, a hint of worry flashed across Kanaz's face, but he eventually smiled and explained, the Setting Sun mountain range is the dividing line between the Kaisa Empire and the Ayarsen Kingdom. There are countless ferocious magical beasts on the mountain. Ordinary people, no matter how brave, would only dare to venture to the edge of the mountain range at most. However, there's something very strange about this, because since entering the mountain range until now, I haven't found a single magical beast. Kanaz frowned suspiciously, saying, that's good, but from now on, you'll be in trouble, haha. Thanks to heaven's blessings. Hearing Kanaz's words, a chill suddenly ran down Chu Tian's spine. Half a day ago, he had been complaining that there was no animal breath in this whole area. Now it seemed that eating vegetarian for the past month was lucky, otherwise, he would have been prey for magical beasts. I came here to pay respects to His Highness, the Radiant Saint Priest Ndong, who is cultivating in seclusion on Heaven-Connecting Peak, the highest place in this region. Kanaz's words and attitude revealed boundless reverence. He raised his hand and pointed to a mountain peak soaring into the clouds, saying, that's the place. Radiant Saint Priest? Is he that powerful? How does he compare to you? Seeing Kanaz looking like an enthusiastic fan about to meet his idol, Chu Tian began to understand, this Ndong person is even more important than a prominent knight. I wonder if he's the second big fish here. Chu Tian secretly appraised. How can I compare to His Highness Ndong? That old man is considered the only one cared for by the goddess of life, a symbol of wisdom, the continent's top priest, the supreme Tao master of the Kaisa Empire. Knowing Chu Tian didn't understand much about the continent's history, Kanaz patiently explained further. 30 years ago, our Kaisa Empire had a war with the Lei Empire along the southern border. The final battle was fiercely fought at Taisher Fortress. In this campaign, our army lost nearly 200,000 soldiers and thousands of high-level mages, suffering severe damage to our national strength. But the fatal blow was that all our main high-level magical beasts died, even our ultimate weapon, the 9th-level magical beast Kuata, was about to breathe its last. This put our Kaisa Empire at risk of being wiped out. In that desperate and critical situation, His Highness Ndong and I single-handedly ventured into the battlefield. Amidst the almost defeated army, he cast a forbidden spell from ancient arts, named Goddess of Life's Song. In the brilliant divine light that shone down on the battlefield, although he couldn't revive the 200,000 soldiers and mages, he caused most of the main battle magical beasts to revive, and the 9th-level magical beast Kuata also recovered its combat power. This turned the tide of battle, defeating the Lei Kingdom's army, which lacked many high-level magical beasts, and allowed us to escape the danger of national annihilation. Kanaz enthusiastically recounted the heroic story that happened years ago, making Chu Tian's blood boil. A single person turning the tide, capable of reversing the heavens and earth with a mere flick of a hand, made him long to meet the legendary hero immediately. Of course, if, after meeting, the hero graciously took care of his future living arrangements, that would be even better. I am going there to request His Highness Ndong and I to heal my mount and friend, the Scarlet Flame Dragon. Speaking of this, Kanaz's face revealed boundless sorrow. Mount? Is it a giant dragon? Chu Tian hurriedly asked. His heart was full of curiosity about this legendary creature. Yes, a fire-attributed giant dragon. So there are still people who can harm giant dragons? Chu Tian wondered in confusion. After all, it was a legendary creature on Earth. Touching a giant dragon meant touching an invincible and powerful force. In a battle with the beast race last time, it covered me and was attacked by 4 golden demon beasts, suffering severe injuries. Although the Empire's priests had tried every method of treatment, for some reason, Scarlet Flame still couldn't move. Kanaz sighed, concluding, now, only His Highness Ndong and I can cure it. I believe it will fully recover. Seeing Kanaz's mournful appearance, Chu Tian constantly comforted him. Woof woof. Whimper whimper. Xiao Bai, nestled in his arms, also imitated by nodding, whimpered a few times, then shook its tiny head back and forth. It can hear and understand what I'm saying. Xiao Bai's actions clearly startled Kanaz. Of course, our Xiao Bai is incredibly intelligent. Chu Tian pouted, not at all pleased. Whimper whimper, woof woof. Xiao Bai cooperated by puffing out its chest and sitting up, its 2 front paws tucked into its chest, its big, round eyes blinking while looking up at the sky, looking as if it were the only intelligent dog in the world. What an adorable pup. Kanaz reached out to pat Xiao Bai's head, but Xiao Bai shook its head to dodge. Xiao Bai can hear and understand human speech? Chu Tian felt something was wrong. Having just arrived in another world, he didn't know the situation here at all, but based on Xiao Bai's behavior, it seemed magical beasts were similar to it. However, Kanaz's words made him question. Aren't all kinds of magical beasts able to hear and understand everything? Of course not, there are 10 levels of magical beasts on this continent. Only magical beasts with intelligence from level 4 and above can hear and understand human speech. From level 7 onwards, magical beasts can use human speech. So what level is Xiao Bai? Could a small dog he casually picked up on the street be a high-level magical beast? Chu Tian felt his heart pounding in his chest, both worried and happy. Well, although I don't know why it's so intelligent, I don't sense any magical fluctuations on its body. Do you still want to raise it until it grows into a pet in your home? Kanaz's tact made Chu Tian's burning heart feel like it was being poured with sweet water, gradually calming down. Gru oh. Xiaobai didn't get angry, instead, it turned its head and whimpered at Chu Tian a few times. Even without Xiaobai's opinion, Chu Tian, the one who could change its fate, was disappointedly making his final decision: raise it until it grows big or keep it as a last meal? Alright, big brother. Chu Tian tried to ease the tension and change the topic. How exactly was Scarlet Flame injured? It was mainly injured by the sharp claws of the golden beam beasts and enemy arrows, Kanaz replied mournfully. The physical wounds have been treated stably, but the injury hasn't shown any improvement. Injured by claws and arrows? A very clear image suddenly appeared in Chu Tian's mind. 4 giant bears dozens of meters tall surrounded the dragon, brandishing their sharp claws, standing on their hind legs, wildly striking at the besieged creature. In such a situation it didn't die. It seems this beast isn't just strong. In Chu Tian's impression, heroic figures either lived in magnificent and splendid palaces or in elegant and lofty villas. Regardless, none of them had any connection to the shabby thatched hut with a broken roof in front of him. Heaven Connecting Peak was indeed repaired by people into a vast platform. In the middle was a circular altar several meters high, carved with magical symbols in an orderly fashion, and in the center of that circle was a strange magic formation. Next to that solemn altar, a crooked temporary thatched house looked completely out of place. Was this the home of Saint Priest and Dong and I? Perhaps all high-level cultivators have their own unique concepts and lifestyles? Chu Tian thought so. His Highness and Dong and I, this junior Kanaz requests an audience. While Chu Tian was still agonizing over the relationship between thatched house and hero, Kanaz respectfully approached and knocked on the door. The door opened. Extremely curious and astonished, he stared at the old man, and Chu Tian's quick-witted face suddenly became dull. Finally, a famous quote suddenly surfaced from his empty mind: there are no heroes in this world. If people keep exaggerating someone's deeds, they will naturally become a hero. Hunchbacked, wearing a gray robe, his figure withered like a dying tree, with a prominent goatee, a face full of wrinkles plus a somewhat gloomy expression. A large and mighty knight like Kanaz was now respectfully kneeling before a useless old man. I know everything about your matter, I will resolve it. And Dong and I slowly and solemnly said a few words, then slightly raised his eyes, which were almost covered by excess skin, extended a long, withered finger, and helped Kanaz up. Oh my goodness! Chu Tian's criticism immediately increased by a notch. Who is this? And Dong and I, in that dying ancient tree matter, pointed at Chu Tian and asked. Respected Grand Priest and Dong and I, how are you? My name is Chu Tian, you can also call me Xiao Tian. I am Big Brother Kanaz's friend. I have heard about your heroic deeds before, so I deeply revere you. Out of reverence, I boldly came along when I heard Big Brother Kanaz wanted to visit you. Although not at all willing, but thinking about his future life, Chu Tian finally had to say things that felt like self-humiliation, and even bowed deeply once more. This young man isn't bad. The Saint Priest looked at Chu Tian, then turned to Kanaz and said, summon Scarlet Flame out? I also need to pray to the gods to heal it. Although he had mentally prepared beforehand, Chu Tian was finally terrified after seeing Kanaz casually summon an incredibly fierce red giant dragon. This kind of long-winged, bat-like lizard, Chu Tian had long known from countless novels that it was a Western dragon, but he only knew as much as he had seen. However, after keeping silent for a moment, the gigantic creature more than 10 meters in front suddenly erupted with an imposing aura, making Chu Tian unable to breathe. And Dong and I looked at Chu Tian with amused eyes, then said, shall we begin? Chapter 3, Bleeding the Giant Dragon. Great Goddess of Life, by your glory, please descend to the mortal realm, listen to the pleas of your humble believers. The profound and solemn incantation slowly rose, soaring high above the rocky peaks piercing the clouds in the setting sun mountain range. On Heaven Connecting Peak, the main and highest peak of the setting sun mountain range, the radiant Saint Priest and Dong and I commanded the wind and clouds, causing them from all directions to gather in one place, with the altar as the center. The clouds grew thicker and thicker. Soon, the entire mountain peak was filled with colors, making it seem to suddenly rise from the continuous mountain range, soaring high into the clouds, proudly gazing down upon all living beings. Raising his magic staff, with both hands towards the sky, pure milky white light emanated from Ndongni's body. After chanting the incantation, Ndongni raised his head, focused his spirit and energy, and intently gazed at the sky. Because of this devoutness, a beam of white light suddenly descended from the sky, as if a sharp sword pierced downwards, shot through the clouds, and plunged directly into the large head of the reddish-gold creature crouching beside the altar. Seeing that his prayer had been answered, Ndongni let out a long breath, wiped the beads of sweat from his forehead, and tried to stabilize his swaying body that was about to fall, secretly thinking, "It's really tiring." Recalling years ago, casting these level 8 spells was just a flick of a finger, yet now it makes me, a level 9 Grand Priest, so tired. Having finished praying, Ndongni's expression became very distressed. Lightly stepping down from the altar, he said to Kanaz, who was worried sick, "Knight Kanaz, I have prayed to the goddess of life, and I believe there will be results soon." "Yes, thank you, respected Saint Priest Highness." He continuously thanked, but Kanaz's eyes stared intently at the large head resting on the altar, his good friend and mount, Scarlet Flame Dragon. Seeing Kanaz's nervous appearance, Ndongni's pale face, due to the depletion of spiritual energy, showed an appreciative smile, thinking that treating a pet like a sibling, only a person of complete virtue and talent can do that. No wonder such a person became the youngest knight on the continent. Suddenly, a violent tremor came, the earth shook and mountains swayed, hundreds of miles of undulating hills in the setting sun mountain range seemed to be caught in an endless, restless dream. The altar, of course, also couldn't avoid swaying and threatening to collapse. Kanaz hurriedly supported Ndongni's frail body, asking, "Your Highness, are you all right?" At this moment, the aura around the altar gradually changed, from white to red, then yellow, green, purple, and finally, a column of 7-colored flashing light shot straight up into the sky from the center of the altar, shimmering and illuminating heaven-connecting peak for a long time before finally disappearing amidst countless starlight. "The goddess of life has responded." The saint priest nodded at Kanaz, indicating that the spell was complete. Seeing Ndongni's action, Kanaz hastily stood up, turned and rushed to the altar, moving so fast that he left blurred afterimages behind, demonstrating the true strength of a powerful knight. However, on the altar, the Scarlet Flame Dragon showed no reaction at all, let alone any change. "Your Highness, why is it still like this?" Lightly patting his beloved magical beast, seeing it had no reaction, Kanaz was so anxious he stammered, "How could this be?" Ndongni hurriedly stepped to the altar, looked from head to tail, inspected it repeatedly for a moment, sweating profusely, his face tightly wrinkled and as red as a monkey's bottom. "My prayer spell cannot be wrong, just now," the goddess of life clearly showed her response. Feeling his magic and faith were severely affected, all 5 senses of the old priest converged. He was extremely confident in his magic, although he had been weakened after a long time and could no longer be as mighty as before. There's no reason why a level 8 spell like that would have no effect. Ndongni pondered painfully, and suddenly, his eyes flashed with starlight. Could it be that the powerful energy in Scarlet Flame's body was damaged, even causing the divine light to disappear? I wonder if its injury is due to external forces? Waving the broken staff in his hand, Ndongni spoke as if explaining to Kanaz, and also as if comforting himself. Not from outside? It was clearly injured by the sharp claws of the golden beam beast and arrows, wasn't it? Kanaz was somewhat disbelieving, but dared not use a tone to contradict the saint priest, only softly raised his doubt. At that moment, everything fell silent. A person holding a dog stood by, looking very out of place. He repeatedly smacked his lips, intending to speak, but hesitated so long that his tongue became bitter. His eyes kept staring intently at the great miracle that had just occurred. Although he had seen countless special effects in movies, along with grand and expensive scenes, but facing such a real and tangible magic appearing before his eyes, Chu Tian became stiff and tongue-tied. Tired of looking at illusions, and he himself couldn't summon wind and rain or be surrounded by gold, silver, and beautiful women, the scene unfolding before him made our young master Sua unconsciously act according to his professional habits, shifting to look at the injured animal from a technical perspective. Not from outside? So it's an internal injury? Arrows? Unable to move? Glancing repeatedly at that listless, lifeless gaze, a flash of inspiration suddenly appeared in Chu Tian's heart. After much deliberation and careful consideration of his interpretation, he then risked doing something that, according to legend, was daring to push the wheel of history. Perhaps, I can heal it. Although not entirely sure of his interpretation, Chu Tian finally spoke a very firm sentence, making Ndong and Kanaz feel as if they had been hit by a bomb. You can heal it? Are you also a priest? Why don't I sense your power at all? The old priest frowned, raised his eyes to scrutinize Chu Tian, then asked in a doubting tone. Xiao Tian, can you really heal it? Although Kanaz's expression showed disbelief, his face also relaxed somewhat. Young Master Sua felt weak in his hands and feet from being stared at by the two, but he was also full of calculations within. Well, if successful, I'll become the knight's benefactor. This connection will make the rest of my life infinitely glorious. If I fail, I've already been struck by lightning once, so what? For my future life, I have to take a gamble. Of course I can, big brother, don't you trust me? After speaking, Chu Tian put Xiaobai down, stood up, and looked earnestly at the two. Ndong and Kanaz exchanged glances. A moment later. Then give it a try, maybe the situation will change a bit. Kanaz nodded forcefully, revealing a determined look as if selling his wife and pawning his children. Having reached such a desperate point, he couldn't let go of any remaining hope. According to lizard standards, these symptoms are due to immense pressure on the nerves. Chu Tian began to carefully examine the giant dragon. If Scarlet Flame were a lizard, Chu Tian could confirm, because it was heavily struck, there's blood stasis in its hindbrain and neck, and this stasis is compressing the nerves, preventing them from functioning. Therefore, this conclusion can only be established if the previous conclusion about the lizard incident was accurate. But then? Young Master Sua felt goosebumps. Lizard or dinosaur? This equation constantly appeared before Chu Tian's eyes. Big brother, give me a dagger. Hesitation was not Chu Tian's character. Gritting his teeth and clenching his toes, Chu Tian, am going for it. Taking the dagger, under the wide-eyed gaze of Ndong and Kanaz, Chu Tian felt around the giant dragon's neck, searching the iron-hard skin for any unusual sensation, any softer or less scaly spot where he could stab the knife. It must be this spot. The hindbrain area is too dangerous. Chu Tian didn't have the guts to operate directly on the brain, so he retreated a little, finding a safer spot on the neck. What are you doing? Scarlet Flame cannot suffer any more harm. Although he gave the dagger to Chu Tian, determined to take a chance, but seeing young Master Sua holding the weapon, constantly searching for a spot as if to stab his beloved pet's throat, Kanaz naturally panicked. Ndong and I also looked at Chu Tian with a suspicious and questioning gaze. Just let out a little blood. Chu Tian narrowed his eyes, smiled faintly, and without further hesitation, plunged the dagger in his hand into Scarlet Flame's back neck. His move was too swift and decisive, truly living up to his reputation as a butcher. A crimson light of blood gushed out, a hot stream of blood flowed from Scarlet Flame's neck. That stream of blood, before Chu Tian could prepare, bathed him from head to toe, leaving no spot untouched. Knight Kanaz was stunned. Radiant Saint Priest Ndong and I was dumbfounded. Woof woof twice, Xiao Bai, standing on its hind legs at this moment, was like a mad dog just unleashed, staring with strange, wide eyes at the scene of its young master Sua bathing in blood. Ah! What are you doing? Scarlet Flame! The horrifying cries of Ndong and Kanaz rose simultaneously. But at this moment, our young master Sua had no mood to enjoy that. Pain. Only one word echoed in Chu Tian's heart, bathing in dragon blood. He wondered if anyone else would ever do this again in the future, but certainly no one had since ancient times. Blood. More or less, it's a treasure that people dream of and beg for. Legend once said that some people forged weapons with blood, then used magic scrolls to complete them. But no one had ever bathed in blood. It seems young Master Sua's future won't be good. However, Chu Tian didn't even know what serious crime he had committed. He only felt every cell in his body tense up, every nerve trembling. Amidst the horrified shouts and Xiao Bai's sorrowful whimpers, he finally couldn't bear the extreme stinging and intense pain, and gloriously fainted on the spot. Grow! When Chu Tian fainted, a roar that shook the mountains echoed, pulling everyone out of their horrified shock. In the joyful and unbelievable eyes of Ndong Anai and Kanaz, Scarlet Flame, the giant dragon that just now couldn't move, now staggered and slowly stood up. Chapter 4, Master and Disciple Chu Tian's current mood was like someone urgently summoned by Cao Cao but couldn't find a restroom anywhere, then suddenly discovered an empty cave with a bright moon and cool breeze, delighted to the point of madness as if he had never been so happy. Since the blood clot in its neck was removed, the giant dragon's recovery speed was very fast, making young Master Chu secretly admire this powerful creature. What made Chu Tian wonder was, Scarlet Flame was said to be a 9th-level fire-attributed magical beast. It must have something uniquely extraordinary about it, right? When Scarlet Flame spread its wings, dozens of meters long, and bowed its head, nodding at Chu Tian in gratitude, its inherent prestige made our young Master Chu's legs tremble without fatigue, and even his mouth, still stained with dragon blood and agape for breath, immediately shut tight. Xiao Bai, however, puffed out its chest, raised its head, sat up, extended a front paw, whimpered softly, and with the other paw, scratched its head, proudly accepting the thanks on behalf of Chu Tian. Its behavior made Chu Tian unable to help but curse under his breath. This little rascal has quite the nerve. What displeased Chu Tian was that, apart from this one expression of gratitude, Scarlet Flame acted haughtily towards him, as if everyone in the world wanted to marry it. Of course, that was only towards ordinary people. Towards Ndong Anai and Kanaz, it was extremely respectful. However, in this wild mountain wilderness, apart from those two, the only ordinary person left was our young Master Chu. Scarlet Flame's attitude was actually not difficult to explain. Arrogance was inherently a characteristic of the dragon race. Moreover, although Chu Tian saved it, in reality, he had cut its neck with a knife. On this continent, who would dare to ask for a bit of a giant dragon's blood and then expect to live a comfortable and carefree life? A proud race would never accept others casually touching or cutting their bodies at will. Fortunately, Kanaz's attitude lessened young Master Chu's sadness. The more his mount recovered, the brighter Kanaz's smile became each time he looked at Chu Tian. When Scarlet Flame had fully recovered, Kanaz was ecstatic, impulsively embracing Chu Tian and proposing to swear brotherhood before heaven and earth. Young Master Chu naturally agreed immediately, not giving Kanaz time to regret. Haha, becoming sworn brothers with a dragon knight, it's truly unbelievable even in a dream. And Ndong Anai made Chu Tian even more excited. When Chu Tian woke up a moment later, the old priest immediately told him to come before him. Young man, thank you for accomplishing what I could not. The saint priest's heart surpassed his appearance, which made Chu Tian feel a bit of reverence mixed with apprehension. No way, please don't be so polite. Perhaps this humble one's luck is quite good right now, but how can it be compared to an old man like you, full of heaven-piercing abilities? Although Chu Tian's mouth was full of flattery, in his heart, he was, on one hand, smugly about to ruin the image of the troublesome old man, and on the other, thinking of ways to establish a relationship with this big fish. Oh, all right, where did you learn the treatment method for Scarlet Flame? Are you also a priest? Gently stroking his goatee, Ndong and I looked at Chu Tian with a hint of doubt and asked. No, I am not a priest. I just suddenly felt urged by something, as if someone told me to do this, and this. Young Master Chu already didn't know what to say. Could he really tell the old man, I am a prodigy veterinarian from Earth? By feeling? Ndong Mi's narrow eyes suddenly flashed with a sharp, cold light, looking Chu Tian up and down. Indeed, it was truly by feeling, sir. Being interrogated by the troublesome old man, a surge of courage suddenly coursed through Chu Tian's body. He stubbornly continued, "Just now, when I saw Scarlet Flame's condition, I felt a bit unwilling, and unconsciously did that. Now that I think about it, I'm still scared, but is it cured now?" Indeed, he possesses innate talent suitable for a true priest. Finally, Ndong and I confirmed that there were no magical or battle chi fluctuations on Chu Tian's body. He was just an ordinary commoner. Slowly withdrawing his gaze, the old man uttered a sentence that made Chu Tian feel as if he was soaring into the clouds. "Would you like to become my disciple?" Before he could recover from the previous conclusion, Chu Tian received another bomb. What a pity! Seeing Chu Tian had no reaction, Ndong and I immediately thought he was unwilling. "You have an unusual sensitivity to injuries and a naturally compassionate heart. It's truly a pity for someone with your aptitude not to follow the path of priesthood." Only Xiaobai understood Chu Tian. It knew that he was overly excited and had forgotten how to behave properly. So it secretly nudged his chest with its tiny paws, then winked and raised an eyebrow to subtly remind him, this opportunity couldn't be missed. "I am willing." Finally, young Master Sua reacted, recalling the TV commercials about people getting married, and hastily answered exactly as in those ads. "A disciple of the Saint Priest?" Chu Tian seemed to see gold, silver, and beautiful women rushing towards him from all directions. "To be your disciple, I am deeply honored. May the goddess of life be with us. I vow to dedicate my entire life to the great cause of a priest." Accompanying those words was an extremely sacred expression. Chu Tian discovered that he also had a bit of innate talent for acting as a divine being or a ghost. "Finally, someone will inherit my mantle. Praise the goddess of life." Saint Priest Ndong and I sighed with endless emotion. Praise the goddess of life. An old man and a young man, two pestilential gods, both murmured sighs of praise for the goddess. A few days later, Kanaz and Scarlet Flame bid farewell. In the imperial capital, Kanaz still had a large army to manage. The proud Scarlet Flame dragon, after experiencing a devastating defeat, requested its master for a break to cultivate in seclusion and hone its skills. It returned to its clan's old lair, Agula Mountain, to be trained to become stronger, in order to cope with intense battles in the future. Bidding farewell to his sworn elder brother and the heroic giant dragon, Chu Tian stayed behind, building a thatched hut for himself and Xiaobai next to Ndong Ni's straw house, beginning the not-so-perfect life of a priest apprentice. Compared to other professions, our priest profession is divided into 9 ranks: priest apprentice, novice priest, junior priest, intermediate priest, high priest, grand priest, priest master, grand priest master, and the highest rank is saint priest, which is your master me. On the very first lesson, Ndong and I elegantly introduced the prestigious priesthood. However, the old man didn't expect his disciple's mind to be wandering elsewhere. Even Xiaobai next to him had half-closed eyes, belly puffed out, paws spread towards the sky, comfortably enjoying the warm sunlight. "So is Master the #1 expert on the continent?" Chu Tian finally had a question he cared about. "Yes, and no." Ndong and I smacked his lips and smiled. "If compared in terms of healing and saving people, then naturally no one can surpass me." "So what about that embarrassing incident with Scarlet Flame?" "And he even said he could revive the dead, yet how useless he was, in the end he still called me out." Young Master Sua secretly grumbled. "And if it's about murder and arson, I want to ask about the aspect of attack power." Heavens, I almost revealed my true intentions. Priests prioritize healing and saving people, there's no need for attack power. Chu Tian's heart quickly sank, knowing that all the gold, silver, and beautiful women that had just flown towards him had vanished. Of course, we also have a certain amount of offensive magic for self-defense. Otherwise, how could I peacefully live in seclusion in this setting sun mountain range full of fierce beasts? Seeing his disciple a bit melancholic, Ndong and I quickly restored his positive thinking. However, these are all high-level magic spells, only priest masters, the 7th rank of the priesthood, can use them. If everything goes smoothly, you can grasp them in just 10 years. Oh dear. So you've killed me. Thinking back on the reputation and strength of the person in front of him, Chu Tian abandoned the idea of walking up and punching the old man a few times. On Earth, he was a vet who vaccinated and neutered dogs and cats. It was extremely difficult to get here. Who knew it wouldn't be any better? And he could only silently treat illnesses instead of injecting people's butts like doctors on Earth. Could it be that my entire life will only consist of emergency aid and treating injuries? Of course, if you want to increase your attack power, it's not without methods. On this continent, the strength of the strong is composed of two parts, one's own magic or battle chi, and magical pets. Can magical pets help increase strength? Chu Tian stared intently at Xiao Bai, who was comfortably basking in the sun, and asked. Xiao Bai certainly can't. What I'm talking about here are high-level magical beasts. A powerful magical pet can be as strong as its master, or even stronger. Just like Kanaz. On this continent, his strength is at most that of a 7th-level great swordsman, but when riding Scarlet Flame, he can contend with knights ranked among sword saints. And Dong and I pondered for a moment, then continued, with Kanaz's innate talent, in no more than 10 years, he can reach level 8. By then, if combined with the level 9 Scarlet Flame, our Kaisa Empire will finally have the strongest expert on the continent, a Divine Knight. Divine Knight. Chu Tian smiled, his eyes distant. Having the strongest brother in the world, can he roam freely and happily? How can one catch high-level magical beasts? Level 7 or 8 would be fine too. Considering Scarlet Flame's aura, Chu Tian lowered his dreaming standards a bit. Well. And Dong and I raised the magic staff in his hand, rapped Chu Tian's head, and snapped irritably, level 7, level 8? Are you still daydreaming? The strength of magical beasts is not like ordinary professional ranks. Level 7, level 8? That's only for those at the Mage Master level or higher to even discuss. Our Kaisa Empire only has 17 main battle magical beasts of level 8 at most. To subdue them as pets, one must first show them their own strength. If not for Kanaz's outstanding character, with his mere strength alone, he probably couldn't even achieve the knight rank, let alone this. Master, I know this. Chu Tian sadly suggested, can you start teaching me magic? Young Master Sua finally decided to accept reality. Oh, alright, let's start teaching you basic magic now, healing art, healing spell. The student listened attentively, and the saint priest didn't hold back any secrets. But healing art is a magic spell practiced on others, there's no subject to be found right now. He hadn't expected his student to progress so quickly in theory. And Dong and I was a bit flustered. Subject for casting spells? Young Master Sua narrowed his eyes, looked around, and finally stopped at the white-furred pup comfortably and elegantly basking in the sun nearby. While still enjoying the warm sunlight, Xiao Bai was suddenly slapped hard, making it jump. It raised its head, only to be met with Chu Tian's sly smile, which sent a chill down its spine. It stuck its butt up, tucked its tail, buried its tiny head deep into the ground, its front paws painfully stroking its small head, trembling all over. Xiao Bai finally had to scurry over to Chu Tian. Great goddess of life. Please grant me your power, healing art. Following the incantation, he waved a hand towards Xiao Bai. No reaction? Do it again. Young Master Sua raised both hands high, vigorously waving them down. Still no reaction. How could this be? After many attempts and failures, Chu Tian was exhausted. The old priest couldn't help but sweat profusely, with beads of sweat glistening on his eyebrows. Try casting the spell on me. And Dong and I painfully scratched his head, finally deciding to use himself as a test subject. Wiping away some sweat, the incantation continued to be uttered from Chu Tian's mouth. Great goddess of life. Please grant me your power, healing art, once again, no reaction. Oh. Escaping the fate of being a test subject, Xiao Bai began to roll on the ground, holding its belly and laughing. Strange. Why don't I feel any magical fluctuations at all? He stroked his not-so-abundant goatee back and forth, and Dong and I bowed his head in distress, lost in thought. Ignoring his master who was agonizing over research, Chu Tian plopped down onto the ground, looking at his numb arms and falling into a daze. Others mastered basic magic in just one day, but why did it become as difficult as deciphering a forbidden spell for me? Young Master Sua, who was originally extremely confident in his ability to heal animals, now began to feel troubled. "Follow me." And Dong and I seemed to realize something, then quickly pulled Chu Tian back to his thatched house. After a while of searching, the old priest finally pulled out a dusty crystal ball. He wiped it repeatedly with his hand, then gave it to Chu Tian, saying, "Try casting a spell on it." "What is this? A magic treasure?" Holding it, "Can I cast forbidden spells?" And Dong Ni's mysterious demeanor made Chu Tian have quite a bit of hope for this crystal ball. "What are you dreaming of? Cast forbidden spells? Can forbidden spells be cast so casually? Even I can't cast them at will." The old priest turned red with anger, raised his broken staff, and rapped Chu Tian's head hard. "Ouch! There's a problem." Realizing that Dong Ni's words might contain information, Chu Tian stepped forward, looked around, and kept asking, "Master, why can't you? Have you heard about the Taisher Fortress campaign from back then?" Of course, that year, Master single-handedly charged into the enemy's formation, saving the Empire from the danger of annihilation. Your heroic deeds have long spread throughout the continent, even wandering storytellers have turned it into a legend. Accustomed to the ways and styles commonly advertised on Earth, young Master Sua casually rattled off some quite accurate details, even though in reality he knew nothing. Alas! At that time I was still young and full of vigor. Seeing our soldiers' blood flowing like rivers on the battlefield, in my indignation, I disregarded my old grandmaster's warning and paid with my own life to use one of the priesthood's forbidden spells, the Goddess of Life's hymn. The result was, although I preserved my life, my strength was greatly damaged, turning me into this appearance. And Dong and I raised his head, vaguely recalling his past glory. At that time, to maintain deterrence against the enemy nations, I hid the news of my injury, secluded myself here, and sought to restore my true strength. The truth was, Dong Ni's arduous self-cultivation had a profound effect. 30 years after the Taisher Fortress campaign, the Lacey Empire was terrorized by the Saint Priest and the 9th-level magical beast Kuata, and the nation lacked high-level magical beasts, so they dared not act rashly. 10 years ago, a low-level commander in the Kaisao Legion, Kanaz, by a fortunate coincidence, acquired another 9th-level Scarlet Flame beast. From then on, the Kaisao Empire became the only nation with 2 level 9 magical beasts, proudly looking down on all other powers. The existence of Scarlet Flame and Kuata turned Lacey's myriad ambitions into nothing. The surrounding nations also bowed their heads and pledged allegiance to the Kaisao Empire. In the past 20 years, apart from the beast race, only the distant Tianhai Kingdom dared to disturb the Empire's maritime borders. Looking into the distance, Chu Tian's appearance was very similar to his strange, withered old master. He secretly vowed that he would, absolutely never use forbidden spells in his life, even though he hadn't learned them yet. Let's not talk about that anymore. Dong and I awoke from his memories. This is a magic crystal. It can test the magical potential in your body. Hurry and try it. Chu Tian raised his left hand to take the crystal ball, secretly chanted an incantation that only heaven knew how it had been altered, and slowly waved his right hand towards the crystal ball. No reaction. That was the obvious outcome for young Master Sua, who knew nothing about magic. And it also made him realize a harsh truth about himself: he was completely ignorant of magic. Goddess of Life. I have indeed taken on a disciple with no magical potential at all. Dong Ni's face grimaced, and he lamented very tragically. Chu Tian's illusions were shattered. The reality of being stupid in magic weighed heavily on young Master Sua's not-so-strong nerves. No matter. Innate deficiencies can be compensated with effort. As long as you believe in the Goddess of Life, there will be miracles. Dong and I gently comforted his disciple, trying to make a final effort. Woof woof. Xiaobai also tentatively approached, wagging its tail against Chu Tian's calf, showing sympathy and encouragement. Praise the goddess of life. Chu Tian nodded mournfully. Chapter 5, Happiness, I'm coming. In the year 718 of the Fantasy Beast calendar, it was considered a good year for the Kaisa Empire. In this year, the Kaisa army, under the command of Emperor Luodi III, a brilliant and strategic emperor, defeated the invasion of the beastmen from the north. Even the archenemy in the south, the Lacey Empire, was subdued by its might and overwhelming aura. The Kaisa Iron Cavalry was indeed invincible. This renowned prestige has been passed down for hundreds of years, proven by countless battles with enemy blood. On the borders, they shattered enemies like splitting bamboo. Domestically, they maintained peace and prosperity. Throughout the court, all civil and military officials prayed for this situation to last forever. Contrary to the officials in the imperial court, the common people of the empire were more concerned with the following news, which quickly spread far and wide. Do you know Scarlet Flame? That's Knight Kanaz's mount. Last time, in the war against the beastmen, it was severely injured. So severe that dozens of priests in the imperial court were at a loss, unable to do anything to heal it. Those were the boasts of a young man before a crowd eager for news in a small tavern near the imperial capital city wall. He spoke so enthusiastically that his saliva splattered onto the faces of the surrounding diners who were listening intently. Here's the hot water. Ah, your news is too outdated. I heard that early last month, Marquis Kanaz personally went to the Setting Sun mountain range to ask Saint Priest Ndong and I to heal his pet. The tavern owner interjected. Hey! There's one more thing you probably don't know yet. Seeing everyone was captivated by him, he solemnly placed a new cup of wine in front of a customer, then smugly continued, actually, Scarlet Flame's injury wasn't healed by Saint Priest Ndong and I. Not the Saint Priest? Then who could possess such skill? All the customers in the tavern were captivated by that news, creating a stir. I heard it was a young and very mysterious priest. At that time, Scarlet Flame's injury was so severe that even His Highness Ndong and I was at a loss. Alright, stop rambling, hurry up and get to work. The owner's unpleasant nagging voice came through. Yes, sir. The waiter nodded submissively, implicitly promising that there was more interesting news to come. At this moment, the tavern door suddenly opened. A young man holding a staff, draped in a priest's robe, led a snow-white pet dog and walked in. They were Chu Tian and Xiaobai. A pristine white robe, a priest's staff taller than half his body, long black hair cascading to his shoulders, a handsome face as sharp as a blade, coupled with a tall and imposing physique. That was Chu Tian's image at the time. Greetings, esteemed priest sir, welcome. The young waiter immediately stepped forward to greet them. Finding a clean, empty table near the window, he reached out and lifted Xiaobai's chubby belly, placing it on the table. Give me 2 bowls of noodles. Two bowls of noodles? Scrutinizing the clothes on Chu Tian's body, which, though not noble, were not poor either, the young waiter couldn't believe it. Priest sir, do you really want to order 2 bowls of noodles? Praise the goddess of life. A decadent lifestyle is the first step towards destruction. Smooth words, a benevolent expression, that was what young Master Sua had learned most proficiently from Ndong Ni's behavior. Gradually, his demeanor also became as decadent as that troublesome old master's. Feeling the few remaining coins in his belt, he continued, then give me your best signature dishes here. Woof woof. Xiaobai protested repeatedly. Oh, get another pot of good wine too. Staring at Xiaobai, he cursed inwardly, look at you, little wine demon. If you hadn't drunk like a cow on the way, I wouldn't be broke like this. Taking out a copper coin, he casually handed it to the young waiter, saying, go to Marquis Kanaz's mansion and deliver a message for me, tell them there's a person named Chu Tian here. The size and complexity of the imperial capital made Chu Tian secretly admit defeat. He had wandered around for half a day but couldn't find his big brother's house anywhere. Now he could only let someone familiar with the roads go and call for him. Stealthily looking at the owner busy calculating in the distance, the waiter quickly snatched the money and put it in his pocket, then asked in a low voice, "Are you a friend of Marquis Canaz?" "What? Is it not allowed?" "Allowed. Of course, it's allowed." The waiter smiled and replied, "But I'm just curious why a prominent figure like you would come to this small, out-of-the-way place." "Stop with the unnecessary words, hurry up and go." Chu Tian, unable to bear the annoyance, repeatedly waved his hands and staff. More than 10 days ago, Chu Tian was finally allowed to graduate by Ndong. To be precise, he was expelled by Ndong. According to the saint priest, throughout the history of the continent, there had never been such an unruly student as Chu Tian. He only mastered the most basic healing art after several months of effort, but its effect was only enough to help Xiaobai relax its muscles and bones. Of course, Chu Tian didn't gain nothing. The bloodbath just now wasn't just for novelty. According to Ndong's confirmation, Chu Tian's body had been purified by the blood of the fire-attributed giant dragon, and he would henceforth be immune to any fire-attributed magic. However, who knew that young Master Sua, oblivious to propriety, after learning this, would spend all his days daydreaming that he absolutely had to find all other elemental giant dragons in the future, ask for a bit of blood to bathe in, to become extremely luxurious, and be immune to all types of magic. The most disappointed person was Ndong. After all his hard work, half a month ago he finally ordered Chu Tian to descend the mountain, to gain experience in the martial world and mature through practice. To such an extent, young Master Sua was grateful to his old master from the bottom of his heart. Because at the time of departure, Ndong gave all the treasures he possessed to Chu Tian, even hiding them in a spatial ring, saying he was afraid Chu Tian would embarrass him after descending the mountain. This made Chu Tian's eyes well up with hot tears, feeling sorry for his old master, lonely and helpless by himself, with no one to care for his frail old body. However, Chu Tian's heartache quickly turned into anger. Xiaobai was truly difficult to raise and teach. When young Master Sua accidentally let it taste a bit of wine, the little fellow immediately fell head over heels for this spicy, strong drink. Every mealtime, it would look at Chu Tian with sparkling, tearful eyes, flickering and hinting, forcing him to spend at least a few copper coins to buy wine for it. Like this, all the way to the imperial capital, when he felt his empty money pouch, Chu Tian was completely dazed. All matters now could only rely on his generous big brother. "Owner. Bill." Recalling his thoughts, he picked up Xiaobai, one person and one dog, full and slightly tipsy, stood up. "It's 20 copper coins in total." The chubby, sweaty owner waddled over. "Why so expensive?" Chu Tian felt his money pouch. Since when did prices in the imperial capital become so expensive? Quickly scanning the equipment on Chu Tian's body, the owner smiled and said, "Hee, priest sir, prices in this city have always been like this." "Oh, then wait a moment, my friend will be here soon, he will pay for me." Chu Tian patted Xiaobai's back. Then turned and sat down. Humph, sir, you don't mean you don't have money to pay, do you?" The folds of flesh on the owner's body quickly shook with his tone. "I just temporarily forgot to bring money, but..." Chu Tian still maintained his ingratiating smile. "So he didn't bring money? Then find something to replace it." After speaking, he cast a greedy gaze at the staff in Chu Tian's hand, "Then take this as compensation?" "Humph." Chu Tian's face darkened. "Wait a moment, you won't be short a single coin." After speaking, he glared at the owner, then turned his head to look out the window, no longer bothering with the old man. No matter what world it is, there are always such petty people, why bother with them and tire yourself out? Looking at the scenery outside, Chu Tian gently stroked Xiaobai's back, calmly waiting for Canaz to arrive. Knowing he was broke, Chu Tian specifically chose a small, humble tavern by the roadside, yet unexpectedly still attracted trouble. "Oh dear. No money and still acting high and mighty, quickly give me that staff." As he spoke, the fat arm on the owner's obese body reached towards Chu Tian. "Get lost." Chu Tian raised his staff, slowly stood up, and the cold light in his eyes intensified. Damn it. A petty priest like you dares to hit people? The owner rolled up his sleeves. Coming here to drink, do you still think you're some prominent figure? He told you to get lost. Didn't you hear? A large hand gripped the collar of the owner who was about to erupt. Big brother. Chu Tian smiled and stood up, greeting Kanaz with the demeanor of a noble aristocrat. Marquis Kanaz? Big brother? The owner was someone with some knowledge of the prominent figures in the empire. In Kanaz's hand, he slowly wilted like a noodle, secretly groaning. At this moment, the waiter who had gone with Kanaz quickly returned and rushed to support the owner's chubby body into a chair. Haha, it seems your spirit has improved a lot. Kanaz patted Chu Tian's shoulder, smiling in approval. How is your master, His Highness Ndong Ni? Ndong Ni? Master. Even the resilient waiter, in turn, stumbled back, and fainted. Chapter 6, Imperial Palace Banquet, Part 1, The next morning. Marquis Kanaz's mansion. Martial arts training ground. Although called a martial arts training ground, its size was only half a football field on Earth. All four sides were neatly arranged with various weapons. Countless sword marks and fist dents were scattered across dozens of rock formations and dummies placed in the middle of the training ground, which were originally used as training targets. In front of a rock formation as tall as a man's head, Kanaz, wearing light armor and holding a greatsword, focused his mind on the large stone in front of him. A faint red light on Kanaz's body constantly stirred, adding to the majestic aura of his tall, motionless figure. Suddenly, Kanaz softly shouted, a dazzling red light flashed from his greatsword, his figure instantly vanished, and the surrounding rocks trembled as if a boat caught in a storm. Shadows flickered, countless rocks shot out and fell, creating incessant chi-chi sounds. After a moment, the red light suddenly extinguished, and Kanaz's figure appeared about 3 meters away from his original spot. The rock fragments that had fallen just now were irregular, but when the last piece of ironstone dropped, they formed a distinctly feminine sculpture. Excellent! A cry of praise came, and Chu Tian, holding Xiaobai, slowly walked into the martial arts training ground. Ah, I never thought Big Brother was also an artist. Walking to the sculpture, Chu Tian admired it while smiling and saying, I just don't know who this lady is. I wonder if she's your future sister-in-law? Casually throwing the greatsword, it flew directly and embedded itself into the weapon rack nearby. Kanaz's face turned red with anger. He snapped, Don't talk nonsense, nothing has been announced yet. Why are you up so early? It seems Kanaz is still very sensitive about his feelings. As soon as it was mentioned, he changed the subject. Chu Tian secretly chuckled. Emotionally, Big Brother was not the decisive commander he was on the battlefield. Who knows, he might still be a middle or high school student who just started to dream of love. It was Xiaobai who woke me up. Chu Tian squeezed Xiaobai tightly in his arms, replying in dissatisfaction. His fingers were still in Xiaobai's sharp teeth. Woof woof. Pulling his fingers out of Xiaobai's mouth, Chu Tian and Kanaz both laughed heartily. Yesterday, after being welcomed to the mansion by Kanaz, he was enthusiastically treated to a banquet and cleansing wine. The wine on the table was replaced by cups, and Kanaz revealed his drinking capacity before his young sworn brother. Moreover, the subordinates in the Marquis's mansion, after learning Chu Tian's identity, also flocked to toast him. Chu Tian's alcohol tolerance was originally not much. After more than 10 cups, his eyes were blurry and his eyebrows raised. Fortunately, he still had a powerful assistant, Xiaobai. It drank wildly all the wine he secretly poured it. In the end, Chu Tian also couldn't escape the scene of being dizzy and stumbling, eventually being carried back to his bedroom. Unexpectedly, this morning, Xiaobai must have resented that he dared to get drunk too early yesterday, not lasting until the very end to let it drink a bit more, so it angrily bit Chu Tian's ear, making him wake up from his hazy dream. Carrying Xiaobai, Chu Tian and Kanaz chatted as they returned to the main hall. After sitting down, Kanaz suddenly said, Last night, after you went to sleep, someone from the Imperial Palace came looking for you. Someone from the Imperial Palace came? How is this related to me? The current emperor, Luodi III, Li Jing-tu-ji, was swamped with work every day. How could he have time to care about a minor figure like me? Chu Tian narrowed his eyes in thought. Tomorrow His Majesty will host a banquet to welcome your great benefactor. Congratulations! Kanaz said with a smile. Great benefactor? Me? Big brother, you're not joking, are you? How could I become a benefactor? Putting Xiaobai, who was prancing around in his arms, down on the ground, Chu Tian was very puzzled. I've only been on the fantasy beast continent for at most 3 months. The first month, I wandered around starving in the mountains, grimacing. The next 2 months, I buried myself in learning skills with the old master. What have I done to be a benefactor for the Kaisa Empire? Why wouldn't you be a benefactor? Healing Scarlet Flame and restoring its combat power is a great achievement for Kaisa. Kanaz explained in more detail. Originally on this fantasy beast continent, the number of magical beasts symbolized a nation's military strength. The reason Kaisa became a powerful nation on the continent was because it had 10,000 horned warhorses, a level 3 magical beast species. With this force, Kaisa's ancestors established an iron cavalry that intimidated all nations. Moreover, it also possessed level 9 magical beasts with extraordinary strength, capable of deciding the outcome of wars. 30 years ago, in the Taisher Fortress campaign, Dong Yanai appeared and saved many high-level magical beasts. Furthermore, his strength was equivalent to a level 9 magical beast, which allowed Kaisa to turn danger into safety. From then on, all nations focused all their energy on developing magical beasts. High-level magical beasts possess immense power, and it is difficult for ordinary people to subdue them. The main high-level magical beasts of various nations are all cultivated, nurtured, and trained from a young age through collective efforts. When in battle, they must be commanded by high-ranking generals. However, this method makes it very difficult to fully unleash the magical beast's strength, being much inferior to magical beasts directly commanded by their masters. Scarlet Flame is a 9th-level fire-attributed giant dragon, one of Kaisa's 2 highest-level magical beasts, and moreover, it has a master. Therefore, one can imagine how important its status is to the empire. Being able to restore its combat power, for the Kaisa Empire, is truly an incomparable great achievement. Speaking of this, Kanaz's expression turned sad. It was I who made Scarlet Flame suffer. If it fought alone, its strength could even surpass that of a mage god. Unfortunately, it had to constantly look after me, resulting in the two of us being stuck together, only able to unleash the strength of an 8th-level dragon knight. Chu Tian seemed hazy, but his mind was very sharp. He slightly narrowed his eyes, and a smile as bright as a full moon appeared at the corner of his mouth. Scarlet Flame in the Kaisa Empire held a status similar to nuclear bombs on Earth, being the most important strategic weapon of a nation. Healing Scarlet Flame was like creating a gigantic atomic bomb for Emperor Luodi III. It seems my contribution this time is indeed not small. I wonder what kind of reward I'll receive this time. 00 the next day. Night fell. Kaisa Imperial Palace. The entire Imperial Palace was painted a brilliant golden color, revealing extraordinary grandeur. 2 rows of guards in golden armor stood on either side of the Tenjianghai Imperial Palace gate. Passing through the gate, a grand hall, painted red and gilded, faintly appeared in the middle of the Imperial Palace. In front of the gate, officials and nobles continuously entered. Fine clothes make the man. Wearing the priest's robe given by Dong Yanai, holding a white jade staff, Chu Tian, who was already considered as handsome as anyone, now amidst a group of thin-faced, hunchbacked old men, appeared even more distinguished and elegant. Seeing all the noble young ladies and madams passing by look at Chu Tian and bow in, Kanaz turned to tease Chu Tian, who was still busy observing the palace scenery. It seems your charm is not small at all. Who knows, a romantic love story might unfold tonight. Haha. Chu Tian glared at Kanaz, smacked his lips, and secretly pointed to a tall, stout noble woman, 3 times the size of an ordinary person, who had just passed by. Then please let Big Brother have that romantic love story. Kanaz couldn't help but want to retort, but as soon as he spoke, he was interrupted. Haha, Marquis Canaz, long time no see. A chubby old man suddenly walked over, cupped his fists, and smiled at Canaz. So it's Grand Minister Yu Xiong, how have you been lately? Canaz also responded with a nice. I didn't expect this to be the protagonist of tonight, Chu Tian, right? Indeed, young in age but high in talent. After speaking, he nodded, showing appreciation. This junior pays respects to Duke and Dao. Chu Tian placed his right hand on his chest, slowly bowed, respectfully performing the aristocratic he had learned from Ndong Ni. Regarding Chu Tian's unintentional great achievement, Canaz found it inconvenient to reveal. According to his merits, he would very likely be granted a noble title. Therefore, he hoped that in this banquet, he would make connections with many influential figures, to lay the groundwork for his future glorious aristocratic life. For an extroverted and playful person like Chu Tian, that was exactly what he wanted. Before leaving, Chu Tian had asked Canaz all night about the backgrounds of important figures. Now standing before Grand Minister and Dao, one of them, how could young Master Chu dare to be slow? And Dao was very pleased with Chu Tian's humble attitude, smiling very brightly. He waved his hand, beckoning a young man in knight's attire from behind. And Sen, come here and pay your respects to Marquis Sir and Mr. Chu. Greetings, Marquis Sir, and also this priest Sir. The son of Grand Minister Yu Xiong, and Sen, performed a nice towards Canaz. Then he looked at Chu Tian, hesitated a bit, and finally nodded, as if the introduction was complete. Dog's eyes can only see beneath people's pants. Sensing in Sen's arrogance, Chu Tian cursed inwardly. However, there's a saying one is under another's roof, so later he would still need to give face to his father, thus Chu Tian only smiled in return. And Dao seemed dissatisfied with his son's performance. He frowned, looked at Chu Tian, and smiled, seemingly admitting fault. It's getting late, we should enter the palace. Feeling the atmosphere was a bit cold, Canaz ended the conversation, gesturing to invite Dao. Alright, let's go inside and talk more. And Dao replied. Chapter 7, Imperial Palace Banquet, Part 2. The banquet was held in the Qianshuang Grand Hall. The hall was supported by 4 enormous dragon-shaped pillars. From south to north, the Grand Hall was connected by a long banquet table. The aroma of delicacies filled the air, making diners continuously drool. That grand and vast scene clearly displayed the unique imperial aura. Even though there were hundreds of people in the Grand Hall at the moment, there was no clutter at all. At the northern end of the Grand Hall, the dragon throne was placed high above, making anyone feel the aura of a world emperor. Emperor Luodi III had not yet arrived, so the guests conversed casually. Under the guidance of Canaz and Dao, Chu Tian continuously paid respects to various dignitaries. His mouth was continuously polite to the important figures, but in his heart, Chu Tian secretly cursed those deceitful nobles. Continuously bowing and performing salutations made young Master Chu's neck ache intermittently, but he still gritted his teeth to maintain his aristocratic demeanor. Chu Tian suddenly missed Scarlet Flame. I wonder how it feels now, after being cut in the neck with a knife that time. It must be mentioned that Chu Tian also felt a bit like a noble now, with a pristine priest's robe, a white jade magic staff faintly glowing, plus noble and elegant gestures. Who could tell that he was originally a veterinarian? Layers upon layers of noblewomen and young ladies vied to approach him, making Chu Tian extremely pleased, thinking that a romantic story might unfold tonight. And Dao still walked closely with Chu Tian, on one hand greeting old acquaintances, and on the other occasionally saying a few words to Chu Tian. His witty and interesting way of speaking, combined with his friendly attitude, made Chu Tian's goodwill towards the old man increase with each passing moment. His Majesty arrives. The high-pitched voices of the guards made everyone present immediately fall silent. Instantly, throughout the Grand Hall, one could hear the sound of a leaf falling. Welcome, Your Majesty. Everyone spoke in unison, raising their voices as Emperor Luodi III appeared. Chu Tian also bowed respectfully, but his eyes secretly glanced and appraised this young emperor. Just like an ordinary person. young Master Sua made his comment. But he also has some imposing aura. Noticing the serious and respectful demeanor of those around him, Chu Tian added a sentence. For someone born and raised in modern society to have a psychology of awe towards an emperor is unrealistic, especially since Chu Tian was also a very daring and bold person. The only thing was, although Emperor Luodi III had a rather ordinary appearance, he had built up a lot of prestige, making all the great ministers wary and reverent, to the point where they tried to breathe lightly. Ah, today is a joyous day, everyone doesn't need to be formal, please all sit down. He lightly waved both hands, signaling everyone to sit down, then turned to Chu Tian. You are Chu Tian, aren't you? Emperor Luodi III looked at him with interest, smiling as he asked, seemingly quite pleased with young Master Sua's appearance. Chu Tian pays respects to your majesty. Chu Tian quickly stepped forward to perform the. He had lived for 20 years, and never before had he performed so many salutations as today. He gloomily complained inwardly. His current expression was precisely according to Ndong Ni's instructions on how to deal with Emperor Luodi III. It was calm, mixed with a hint of unspoken praise. Chu Tian had already prepared for a situation like this in court. Chu Tian, you have rendered great service to the nation this time, and deserve a grand reward. Finally, it's down to practical matters. Chu Tian tried to suppress his agitated body, which contained a pounding heart, and humbly replied, this humble subject's ability to exert strength for the Kaisa Empire and contribute to your majesty is truly my honor. I dare not ask for rewards. But in his heart, he screamed, bring out all the gold, jewels, beautiful young women, whatever it is, I won't refuse. My Kaisa Empire values clear rewards and punishments the most, how can one not be rewarded for merit? I bestow upon you the rank of Count. Plus 10,000 gold coins. Furthermore, the name Chu Tian sounds too strange and does not suit a noble status, so I bestow upon you an honorary name, Flatanok. So, Chu Tian, no. Flatanok. Oh heavens, look down. Flatanok Tian Sua has officially integrated into the continent's nobility. After calmly expressing his thanks, Chu Tian continued to maintain an unchanging expression, as if these titles and gold and silver should not belong to him. Chu Tian's reaction, in turn, made Emperor Luodi III's eyes light up, secretly praising him. In his heart, he secretly gave Chu Tian 8 grand characters, unmoved by favor or disgrace. Capable of great use. Oh gulp gulp. Swallowing saliva with loud gulps, clenching his hands to keep them still, Chu Tian tried to compose himself. After Emperor Luodi III finished bestowing rewards and left the grand hall, Chu Tian also finished calculating the value of the gold coins he had just been given. 10,000 coins. 10,000 gold coins. When parting with Ndong Ni, the old man only gave one large silver coin. With that one large silver coin, Chu Tian could comfortably travel from the setting sun mountain range to the imperial capital. Now, in a flash, he had 10,000 coins, and they were gold. If converted to silver, it would be 1,000,000 coins. I, young Master Sua, have taken one step into the ranks of the great magnates. Praise the goddess of life. Great happiness has finally arrived and surrounds Chu Tian. Being ennobled was within his expectations, not enough to stir Chu Tian who was already prepared. But the gold and silver he received were so sudden that he couldn't immediately grasp their full value. But it seems the goddess of life was quite favorable to her follower. Chu Tian didn't realize that his ignorant expression just now, to Emperor Luodi III, had made him appear as someone indifferent to material possessions and power. Congratulations, esteemed Count. The congratulatory words woke Chu Tian from his sweet dream. Turning his head, the speaker was the heir of the Fan Ma Tu family, Lei Ji. Haha, let's rejoice together. Chu Tian dared not delay. The person in front of him was a well-known playboy who had been born a marquis. Moreover, he represented his family, so his significance was even more extraordinary. Without Fan Ma Tu, nothing could be bought, that was something everyone in the Kaisa Empire knew. The Fan Ma Tu family has been passed down for hundreds of years, since the early days of the Kaisa Empire's founding. Through generations of dedicated management, at this moment, Fan Ma Tu controlled the majority of professions in Kaisa and held sway over all cross-continental gold trade activities. The common folk often spread rumors that the main reason Emperor Luodi III was able to defeat other princes and inherit the throne was by relying on the financial power of the Fan Ma Tu family. A small goldfish needs to be wary of a big goldfish. That was Chu Tian's assessment of the heir of the empire's wealthiest family. Chu Tian clearly knew that his wealth was just a grain of sand compared to the golden desert of the Fan Ma Tu family's eldest son in front of him. Confirming this, Chu Tian smiled his most sincere smile and chatted with Lei Ji. Becoming more and more open, Chu Tian discovered that this playboy Lei Ji was actually very much to his liking. He had no arrogance of a distinguished scion, his language was direct and refreshing, sometimes even saying a few dirty words, just like his dorm brothers in college. Gradually, the two unconsciously discarded the detestable aristocratic formalities, put their arms around each other's shoulders, and whispered discussions about the quality of beautiful women in the imperial capital. Occasionally, their discussion was punctuated by lewd laughter. Fladenok, do you know? In a moment, the number one beauty of Kaisa might appear. Lei Ji raised his eyebrows, using a vulgar gaze to scan Chu Tian. By then, you might be so enchanted you'll faint. The number one beauty of Kaisa? Who is it? Why is this nickname so arrogant? You're not exaggerating, are you? Having seen many celebrities on Earth, Chu Tian couldn't believe he would be captivated by this ancient-style beauty. Lei Ji defiantly pouted and gave Chu Tian a dismissive glance, not at all angry. He replied, "Oh my goodness. Of course, it's His Majesty's younger sister, Princess Celine. I warn you, if you dare to disrespect the goddess in my heart again, I will duel you. Praise the goddess of life, I still remember you're just an ordinary person. A duel? I'll accompany you immediately." Chu Tian replied with a sly smile. Seeing Chu Tian's sly smile and expression, and comparing his own physique with his opponent's, Lei Ji gave up. "Damn it. I suspect you're not a disciple of the saint priest, otherwise, how could you be so shameless?" Chu Tian laughed boisterously, replying with a famous quote from Earth, "Man's nature is inherently evil. Shamelessness is my true nature. Haha. But he's even more shameless than me." Lei Ji had nothing more to say. So fragrant. A faint, ethereal fragrance suddenly wafted through the air, making young Master Sua's nose tingle restlessly. "I can't believe it, a dignified disciple of the saint priest actually dares to call himself so shameless." A pleasant voice came from behind Chu Tian.